My experience, but also the experience of women I've spoken to, black people I've spoken to, gay people I've spoken to, is we often feel gaslit. We often feel when we're explaining our experiences with the police that we must have imagined it.
Do you accept that there has been a failure to hold the Met to account here? That this is not just about the Met and its own failures internally, it's about a problem with oversight?
Yes. Look, I asked for this independent review into the culture and standards of the police service. I asked for it to be done by Baroness Casey because of my concerns around the systems and cultures in the police service. The words I used when I was with you about a year ago, when I lost confidence in the former commissioner, was that the relationship that I had with the leadership was one where they appeared to be in denial, complacent and arrogant. The phrases Baroness Casey uses, by the way, is defensive, resistant to change, and unwilling to engage with communities. And so, the report doesn't shock me, it saddens me, because it's a validation of the experiences that I've had as a person of colour growing up in London, as a former human rights lawyer dealing with policing issues as well, but also somebody who's met victims, met bereaved families, has listened to Londoners. Where this report is different, though, and it's really important that your listeners appreciate this, it's not just Baroness Casey speaking to Black, Asian, minority ethnic Londoners, women Londoners, those Londoners from the LGBTQ plus community. It's police officers who are Black, Asian, minority ethnic. It's police officers who are women. It's police officers who are gay, and it's their experiences as well, which has led to her concluding, which I fully accept, that the police service is institutionally racist, institutionally misogynistic, and institutionally homophobic.
You are responsible, though, as I said at the start, for the strategic direction of the Met Police. This report says the force has the wrong priorities. It says public protection isn't good enough, that protecting women and children is essentially lip service because it's not actually happening. That is partly your fault.
It is, but she also explains that the issues are over generations, and also an issue of operational independence being used as an excuse to stop us, inverted commas, interfering. She also talks in the report about how the Met Police Service haven't been sharing stuff that she thinks they should share. And we're often presented with the issue of operational independence. And it's a good principle, by the way. I shouldn't be directing the police who to investigate. Just think about where that could lead to. So they should be independent. That can lead to sometimes a police service playing off politicians against each other, and also not being open to change. And that's why this report is so important. Why is it so important? Because what she's done is spent more than a year shining a light on every part of the Met Police Service. So there can be nobody now who can resist the change.
But can we just separate those two issues out? Because I'm not asking you to have, political oversight of direct policing on the day. What I'm saying to you is that Louise Casey has found, as you say, after an incredibly comprehensive year spent looking into the Met Police, that women and children were essentially not being helped, that, victims and survivors of rape were being told it was their fault. You are responsible for the strategic direction of the Met. She finds directly that the Met has the wrong priorities. I mean, is it now the time that you ought to offer your own resignation following this report?
Let me be quite clear. I've lifted the lid and exposed some of this culture and these systemic issues. Reforming the police is a critical part of my mayoralty. You can go back over the last 6 years, some of the issues that I've raised from the gangs.
So has the Met not been listening to you? Is that what you're saying here?
Well, no, clearly not. That's why I lost confidence in the Commissioner. I'm the guy who was criticised by the Prime Minister, Home Secretary, Policing Minister, Chief Inspector of Constabulary, the Met Police Federation, because I lost confidence in the former Commissioner. By the way, the former Commissioner, when she left, was given a Guard of Honour by her colleagues, right? That's the culture that exists in the police service. I said at the time that I was at the end of my tether in relation to not being able to solve this by myself. I needed support from the government. I got no support, which is why I said to the former Commissioner before she left, we needed an independent review. When I was given a list of people to do the review, I said no, and I insisted on it being someone of the calibre of the crossbencher Dame Louise Casey. So, it gives me no comfort to be vindicated, because I'm incredibly sad, because this is a sad day for our police service. It's a sad day for police, and probably the saddest in the last 200 years. We also, by the way, next month will commemorate 30 years since Stephen Lawrence was brutally murdered in a racist attack in London, 25 years since the Macpherson report. So, I'm quite clear in relation to the importance of reforming policing to me personally, but also the importance as the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Mayor.
Yeah. Just on that personal note, have you experienced racism at the hands of the Metropolitan Police yourself?
I have. As a child, as a young man.
As an adult, have you?
Yeah, but the phrase we used to use when I was stopped in my car driving was, driving while black, because if you're not white, you're black, and so yeah, I have.
Have you experienced it recently?
No, look, most police officers obviously know that I'm the mayor, and so I'd expect my experiences are very different to the experiences of other Londoners who are black, Asian, minority, ethnic, and so I've got the humility to recognise that my experience now is different. But I speak regularly and listen regularly to Londoners, whether they're women, whether they're from the LGBT+ community, whether they're from the black, Asian, minority ethnic community. But here's the point. People, even within the police service from those backgrounds, are treated appallingly. That's why it's so important we have the complete overhaul.
You mentioned denial before. You raised that word yourself. Let's talk about the Met Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, because he's rejected the terms institutionally racist, sexist and homophobic. Is he in denial?
Well, I spoke to him at length yesterday, and he fully accepted the police service was sexist, misogynistic and homophobic. And so I'm quite clear in relation to accepting that the police service is institutionally racist, institutionally sexist, institutionally homophobic. I mean, I can't speak for Mark in relation to the problems he has with the definition of institutional racism.
But does that frustrate you then? Because Louise Casey says if you don't accept what I'm saying here, then there is still a huge problem, and he won't accept it.
Well, it would frustrate me if Sir Mark didn't fully accept Dame Louise Casey's report, if he didn't accept the need for a complete overhaul. My experience of him, he's only been in the job since October, is the Met Police Service, by the way, we're nowhere near finished, has come on leaps and bounds in relation to transparency and accountability. He's also, by the way, going back 10 years to look at every single allegation made against a police officer or a staff member in relation to domestic abuse or sexual offences. So my experience of him is very different to the former commissioner. So no, I'm not frustrated, but it's not appropriate for me to put words in his mouth or to explain why he's got concerns with that definition.
Yeah, I mean, he's also said that he won't disband the specialist firearms unit, which Louise Casey says really does need to be disbanded. It's at the heart of a lot of the really serious issues, about rejecting women, about trying to break women down, about, fundamental sexism within the force. We spoke earlier to Farah Naz, whose niece was Zara Alina, and she said the only way that she will trust that this can change is that if all of the recommendations from Louise Casey's report are accepted and that there is political oversight. We know already that they're not going to be. So it's already failed at the first hurdle.
To be fair to the Commissioner, my understanding is he's not said he will not disband the...
he has said that this morning. He's repeated that this morning.
He said he can't do it overnight because they're still working. So
what he's actually said is that he won't disband the unit. He will try and change it, but he won't disband it. Louise Casey asked for it to be disbanded.
Well, let's see. My understanding is what he said is he can't do it overnight because there's still work to be done clearly in relation to protecting, diplomatic and parliamentary protection and so forth. But it's quite clear what Dame Louise Casey has said. It's quite clear the examples she gives of the consequences of that culture and those systems in place. Let's wait and see what he does.
Can I ask you finally, just for your personal reflections on this, because anyone who's read that report would find it very difficult reading. I found it incredibly difficult reading. I have to say, for me, I struggled to keep a journalistic head on it as a woman who lives in London. I live and work here. How did you feel reading it, just as a person?
I felt sad. I tell you what else I felt, and this is the first time I said this actually, is my experience, but also the experience of women I've spoken to, black people I've spoken to, gay people I've spoken to, is we often feel gaslit. We often feel when we're explaining our experiences with the police that we must have imagined it. That because people find it incredulous, and for a long time I felt gaslit. I felt like, is it just me? Because my white friends haven't got this experience, and when I speak to women in particular, they also felt that, hold on a sec, I was the victim of rape. I reported it, and then what I thought would happen didn't happen. And the reason why I think Dame Louise Casey's report is so important is because she gives examples of the experience other people have had, not ordinary Londoners, some of those as well, but police staff and police officers as well. And so I fully appreciate your experience, and I can just imagine how difficult it must have been for you, who's not intimately involved in policing. But I tell you what, it will be really important for those who've really felt that they haven't been believed. The word validate is often overused. I think it validates our feelings. And I tell you this, I'm not just speaking to you as the mayor. Of course I'm the mayor. And of course I'm the police and crime commissioner. I'm speaking as somebody who spent my entire adult life trying to reform the police service, first as a human rights lawyer dealing in policing issues, then as a member of parliament, then, of course, as the mayor. But also, I've got skin in the game because my experiences growing up in this city that I love, the experiences of my family and my friends, has been one where we haven't always felt the police is on our side, and I think that's not fair. I just don't think it's fair.
But Sadiq, just finally, there's a question on this because we've been asking people: do they trust? Would they tell their kids to approach a police officer in London and feel confident? You've got daughters. I think I've got daughters. Do you feel, not where we are in 5 years' time, not when things are changing, as of today, could you say completely to your daughters, if you're in trouble, if it's late at night, you see a copper, you can trust them? Can you say that?
I can. And let me say the other thing, though, which is really important, part of your question, Stig, which is really important. So firstly, yes, I do say to my daughters that they're 21 and 23, trust the police. It's really important. If we were the victims of crime, God forbid, we'd ring the police, and I say the same to them. But the police have got to have the humility to realise that because trust and confidence is at an all-time low, they, for example, can't, if they're in plain clothes, approach a woman when he's by himself, the police officer by himself, and not be surprised that person is scared. They should have the emotional intelligence and the wherewithal to realise things have changed now. Whereas in previous years, a plainclothes male officer could have approached that woman in a dark alley. They can't now. They've got to make sure where they can, there's a uniformed officer present. It's in a well-lit area. Of course, there may be exceptions, and I get that. They've got to understand that, and it's both sides of the equation, right? It's our daughters, our children, us, but the police themselves. And see the really heartbreaking thing. I was looking recently at the police crime surveys. Yes, it's outrageous. Only 51% of Londoners have confidence in the Met Police Service. You know, in Manchester it's 40%. In West Yorkshire it's 49%. In West Midlands it's 50%. The average across our country is 52%. This is a national problem. So those around the country who may feel they can be complacent because it ain't a problem for them, it really is.
Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, thank you very much for your time this morning.